Hey, everybody, it's Natalie Bencivenga, and welcome to another edition of Facts Over Fear. There is so much going on in our communities these days. I really wanted to focus in on solution-driven journalism, really for the time being and moving forward, because I want people to feel empowered to make change in their own communities and really in their own backyards. So we're going to kick things off today talking about what else? ICE and the impact it is having now here in the Pittsburgh region. But this is really a conversation no matter where you live, because I think we'll all be able to learn something and take away some tools that we can use. As immigration enforcement increasingly moves into neighborhoods, workplaces, and public spaces, Pittsburgh-based Frontline DIGNITY is organizing to meet the moment. On Tuesday, tomorrow, January 20th, the group will host an in-person Dignity in Action rapid response training to equip community members with the tools to respond lawfully and safely to ICE activity. Now, this is pretty cool. So due to overwhelming response, come on, this is why I love people, right? At the end of the day, they do the right things. They had to move locations. So stay tuned for that information. You can read about it today, and I'm sure we're actually going to talk about it right now. And the training comes amid heightened local concerns, protests calling on elected officials to reject cooperation with ICE. I mean, I think they all need to be saying, abolish ICE, or what are you doing? And a national shift towards community-based enforcement that puts families, workers, and children at greater risk. Frontline Dignity aims to turn neighbors into informed, principled organizers ready to protect one another when it matters most. So, Jaime, thank you so much for waiting patiently while I did that intro. It's great to have you here. For everyone who doesn't know Jaime yet, and you will after this interview, his name is Jaime Martinez, and he is the executive director of Frontline Dignity. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure.
Absolutely. So I wanted to get hyper-local tonight because this came into my inbox earlier, and I was like, this is exactly the kind of conversation I want to be having. So no matter where you are, if you're in Minnesota, if you're in California, or if you're right here in Pittsburgh, know that you are not alone, and there are people standing up for one another in our communities. So let's kick things off a little bit about your organization. For people who are unfamiliar with Frontline Dignity, can you share a little bit about your mission and why is this moment so urgent in the need to organize?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Frontline Dignity exists to build community capacity to respond lawfully, effectively, as safely as possible to immigration enforcement. We recognize that dignity and violations to dignity is at the center of today's crisis in the country. And so we want to bake into the organizing infrastructure, bake into the way in which we interact with one another, the idea of really seeing the human person, working around that, and fighting back against the injustices that we're seeing. Today's moment is so difficult. I snuck away and took a little break a few Wednesdays ago. And unfortunately, somebody in Minneapolis who very well could have been me, a legal observer going out and watching immigration enforcement do their job and observing for any civil rights violations, observing for any act of injustice, was brutally murdered. That's so scary. That is one more step into authoritarianism. And we don't get out of authoritarianism by all of us kind of sitting here and being mad and posting about it. We do it by being human with one another, engaging in connection, organizing, and when we organize, we win.
Absolutely. If you're just joining me, I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and I'm with Jaime Martinez, the executive director of Frontline Dignity. If you have any questions or any thoughts that you'd like to share, please put them in the comments below and we will try to get to them. And please be respectful of everyone as well. How has ICE's shift towards neighborhood enforcement changed daily life, in your opinion, Jaime, for immigrant families? Because at least what we're seeing on the news, ICE isn't just sticking to arresting, the criminal, illegal, as they had framed this conversation. They're basically going for anyone who looks Black or brown or has an accent. Can you talk a little bit about the terror that this is really imposing on our communities, or what you're hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll even talk to you about what's going on in my own family. I'm the son of immigrants. Both of my parents come from Nicaragua, and they're very blessed my dad came through a scholarship, was very blessed to have that happen. It's a long story, but the way I got into this country, the way I was born here, is because of an immense amount of luck and immense amount of privilege that a lot of people don't have
Mhm.
the privilege to have, right?
Mhm.
We all have that journey of the American dream. I believe myself to be a product of the American dream. And what we've been seeing since January 20th of last year, especially, is a an intentional erosion of that dream. And it seems to be pretty sadistic as well.
Yeah.
I've been working within the Latino community here in Pittsburgh for around the last year. And I can tell you that since the start of this new administration, people have been afraid to go grocery shopping. They've been afraid to go to the local Home Depot, afraid to go eat outside. It's hurting the local economy.
Yeah.
Here in Allegheny County, we've been facing population decline
Mhm.
consistently for decades. And it's
Right.
solely because of the immigrant population that now we're seeing a reverse in that trend. And so we're seeing ourselves stab ourselves in the back because of politics, and families are being ripped apart. Every day on Facebook, I'm seeing my wife was taken, my husband was taken, my dad was taken. I don't know what to do. People are afraid. And people live with the trauma of having witnessed violence. They're seeing people come to their doors, and they're
Mhm.
having to make tough decisions with their children in the house. Young children are seeing these situations unfold. It's becoming a kind of routine of daily life to hear about these things and to witness these things. And it's a constant re traumatization of the immigrant community. And not just the immigrant community, but to everybody who is connected to it, right?
Right.
And that's all of us. That's all of us because immigrants are everywhere. Immigrants make America great. And we're neighbors. We're all neighbors. So it's been really hard to see.
That's right. And I want to just elaborate on your point a little bit. I've been doing a show for WQED that I'm executive producing and hosting called Destination with Natalie Bencivenga. And I'm exploring the immigrant roots of neighborhoods around the city and the impact that they've made to remind us all of the importance of showing up and in community for one another. And I went to Beachview to film one of the episodes, and it was remarkable to me. This is a community that has literally survived and is now beginning to thrive purely because of the wonderful Latino community members that are comprising it, that are opening businesses, that are participating in civic life, that are raising families there, rehabilitating homes there, like refurbishing the whole community. And so I just want everyone to understand this isn't abstract. This isn't statistics on a piece of paper. These are people, and these are home lives, and these are work lives, and these are friendships. And I came away from that one episode, and I've done several now, but that one in particular was such a sense of a full heart because there was such pride in that community of being a part of the tapestry of the city of Pittsburgh. And it's important that we recognize each other's humanity in this moment, to your point. And you brought something up, and I wanted you to elaborate on it. We talk about the American dream a lot. And I think for a lot of people, it's a farce, it's a myth, it's something that they've never actually experienced. But for a lot of others, it was the guiding light, the reason that brought them to America. When you look at your own experience with the American dream, what does that dream look like? Because I fear as though the turn the country is taking, it's becoming more of a nightmare. And I wanted your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think about my grandmother who grew up in Jinotega in Nicaragua, and she grew up as a housemaid, as a house servant. My father, when he was young, grew up with dirt floors
Mm.
and tin roofs. Nicaragua is the poorest country in Central America. And I think about where I am now and where I was able to study and get my education, the fact that I've been able to shake hands with the President of the United States, and the way in which I'm able to do the work that I do now, the social mobility, the ability to do the work, do the hard work, put your head down, provide for your family, and watch a generation succeed. That's the American dream.
Mm.
And immigration enforcement is taking away from that. But it's also important to remember that it's not just immigration, right? There's an affordability crisis in this
Right?
country. It's the lack of healthcare and access to healthcare. It's
Mhm.
the lack of seeing each other as Americans, as human beings, and othering one another, right? On a more like fundamental level. So there are so many policies being distorted that work together to promote this destruction of what we know to be the American dream, the one that we all cherish, and the vision that we all exported to all of these countries that are now coming to us for
Mhm.
decades and decades and decades. You go anywhere, you'll always see a McDonald's. People will always know a reference to an American movie.
Mm-hmm.
We've
Mm,
exported our culture everywhere, and now people come expecting that same culture, and they're hitting a brick wall,
mm.
a literal border wall, and it's such a shame.
If you're just joining us, I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and I'm here with Jaime Martinez. He is the executive director of Frontline Dignity. Jaime, I didn't want you to think I wasn't paying attention. I was just looking down at my notes because you were saying so many good things, and I wanted to make sure I was going to ask you some stuff in the order in which you are sharing information. But I wanted to turn our attention back to what is going on tomorrow night here in Pittsburgh, this rapid response event, because to your point, the American dream, it's not something guaranteed, just like our rights as Americans aren't necessarily guaranteed. These are things that we have to fight for. These are things that we have to believe in. And these are things that we have to almost, seed in order to watch bloom again and again. This place isn't a linear space. It's almost more of a circle, and we're cycling through and deciding who we want to be again. So because of the overwhelming response to this event that you're going to share more information about, it's very clear, at least here in Pittsburgh, we want to be in community. We want a life that celebrates one another and uplifts one another towards these ideals of justice and equity. Can you share a bit about this event tomorrow night and why people should consider checking it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Dignity Action Rapid Response Training is taking place tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. In the east end of Pittsburgh. If you look it up or if you go to frontlinedignity.org, you can find a button to register for the event. Once you register, you'll get all of the information about where you'll find us. Again, we're in the east end, but we haven't shared the full address out of safety concerns. But like you said, we're so excited because we outgrew our previous space.
Yeah.
We have hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people that have expressed interest and that are willing to do something. And I want to speak to something you said, actually. You were mentioning how our rights aren't, we take them for granted and they can be
Mm-hmm.
taken away from us. They seem to be privileges now in today's
Mm-hmm.
society. But
Mm-hmm.
you know what can't be taken away from us ever? Our dignity,
Mm,
right? I think back to the concentration camps in World War II during the Holocaust. The people that were there, the prisoners, um, they never had their dignity taken away. That was a
mm,
choice that they decided to hold on to that dignity, and they found ways to preserve it and protect it and to celebrate their dignity with each other, right?
mhm,
Even when we are at our worst, when we are on the floor and we have been kicked and we are down so bad,
mm.
our dignity still remains because, in my opinion, it's God given. And so,
When
along
you
those
think
lines, yeah,
when you
go ahead.
think of the word dignity, let's dig into this a little bit more philosophically. How does that word experience itself for you in reality? When you think of human dignity, something that can't be taken from us, what does that mean?
Dignity means treating people as an end in themselves rather than as
Mm,
a means to an end. It
mm,
means seeing the fullness of the human person as they are, right? All the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, and knowing that they are a person created in so much awesomeness by the universe and by their family and by the world, and that there is goodness in there and that no one can take that from them.
I
That
love
to me
that.
is dignity. And to see somebody with the lens of dignity is to know that they are an end in themselves. We
Mm,
don't use them for politics. We don't use people to get more money, to get more resource, to get an end. People and people thriving is the end goal there. And Pittsburgh's really good at that, right? We've been
mhm,
working at that. Every chapter of Pittsburgh's history
right.
has written that. Whether it's the strikes and the unionizing, whether
Mm,
it's building America, right? Whether it's through way back when in the Revolutionary War, right? We
mhm,
have been the center of creation and ideation and of making sure that people's dignity is upheld. And so in a time like today, I mean, I think about Fred Rogers.
yeah.
Fred Rogers taught us how to be good neighbors. I live on the north side, and we have this monument of Fred Rogers overlooking downtown and our three rivers. And I think about how he taught me how to be a good neighbor here in Pittsburgh and how to look for the helpers. And we all know those quotes of being kind and living in love with one another. But he didn't just emulate being a good neighbor in Pittsburgh, right?
Mhm.
He blast that out to the rest of the country. He
Yeah.
influenced an entire generation. And so, in my opinion, Frontline Dignity is an inheritance of that legacy to meeting today's moment, right? We are not just teaching
Mm-hmm.
each other how to be good neighbors. We are not just emulating what it means to be a good neighbor
Mm-hmm.
here within our specific neighborhoods, within the 412, right?
Yeah.
But we're also taking that to the rest of the country. And we've done that in places like Oregon. We just did a
Mm.
3-day swing through Oregon and cities there with the largest and oldest civil rights organization for Hispanics in the country, with the largest labor union. We have been doing that out in New York and Baltimore and the DMV. And we're going to keep going to different regions of the country because people need to know that Pittsburgh has good neighbors. We know how to do it right. We know how to treat people with dignity. And people are eager for that sort of message right now.
What do you love about being from the global south and those roots?
Yeah, it's we are happy people.
You
We are so
are.
happy. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm so proud to be Latino, and we are happy people that always have hope. We have so much
Mm.
inspiration and hope within us. It is unshakable. And yeah, I mean, I also love our food. I love our music, but I mean, you go to places like Latin America and you recognize it is full of joy. There's
Yeah.
joy everywhere around you. And I'm so grateful to have grown up in a culture like that, with a family like that.
And I think that's so important when we're talking about dignity and we're talking about seeing each other in our full humanity, right? That's how I look at dignity. It's this idea of the celebration of one another because I'm so blessed. I have friends from all different walks of life, from all different backgrounds and lived experiences. It just makes my life so much more fun, so much more interesting. It's very selfish, my reasons, right? It's just like my life is better because I have all of these different people in my life that bring different perspectives and different ways of thinking about things. And I think it's such a gift to surround yourself with people who think around about the world differently, who have had different experiences with food and with culture and with music and art and all the things that make us human, make things worth living. So I just want to remind people, but at the very heart of all of this, why are we being pitted against one another? To what end? And who does it benefit? Because when you step outside that comfort zone and you get to learn and meet people from different walks of life, you end up realizing, one, you have a lot more in common than you have as differences, but also your differences are really cool and interesting and they just make you better people. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But let's get back to the event and let's talk a little bit about rapid response training itself, because I don't completely understand what that is. And I bet a lot of people listening have maybe heard of it, but aren't fully grasping the concept. So why is this type of training so critical? How does it prepare communities? And what will they take away from the experience?
Sure. Well, all of us as neighbors have agency. We can all
Hmm.
do something for our immigrant neighbors that are vulnerable right now. And so, as a baseline, what we can all do as we go about our lives and we go to and from work and we go to all the different public spaces that we're a part of because we have a social life and all, chances are we're going to come head to face with an immigration enforcement operation at some point.
Wow.
Um, and when that happens, we want folks to be prepared because right now, folks are being disappeared,
Yeah.
and immigration enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security really is kind of excited to just have people quietly disappear, quietly deported, and for no one to ever know that it happened,
Yeah.
right? So we need to be that sunlight that is also a very good disinfectant, right?
Mm.
We need to know what to do when we're there, how to de escalate any situation, how to get the right details about the incident so that we can plug you into a broader network, a broader ecosystem, so to speak, of people that are doing the work to combat the injustices taking place right now. We're connected with legal organizations, social service organizations at the local level. And when we get the information from our ordinary neighbors as they go about their lives, we can then connect said person to who's been detained to legal support. We can connect them and their family to groceries, right? Anything that they may need for them to be okay. And we can bring attention to what's going on in our own neighborhoods and as to the kind of violence being inflicted on our neighbors. And that's going to start to change people's minds. Something that I've seen is when we have something that we hear about on the New York Times
Hmm.
and we read it and we're like, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. I can't believe
Yeah.
that. We put it away And
Yeah.
then maybe it sits with us for like 24 hours, but then it's something else. I mean, can you name like, this is a rhetorical question, right? But like,
Sure.
can anybody name like the last school shooting and where it was,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? There's so many things that happen across the country that everything meshes together, right? But all of those people are human beings, and there's a tragedy in each and every one. But when it happens here and when it happens locally, people pay attention.
Yeah.
And to witness an immigration enforcement operation is horrible. I have witnessed many. I have wept alongside my neighbors. I have been angry. I have been
Mm.
distressed and feeling hopeless in these times, right? But all of those neighbors then go back to the people on their blocks and they say, "You'll never believe what I saw." And then maybe the person that watches a different media network who believes different things, right? Or a person who is very approving of immigration enforcement right now. They'll say, "Well, I didn't vote for that level of cruelty. I thought they were doing something else." And
Yeah.
so we're training neighbors to bring the truth to their own communities, connect people that are vulnerable to the networks that can support them, and really put our bodies on the line in as
Mm.
ethical and safe a way as possible, knowing that there's always a risk, and challenging people as well to say, "Hey, I'm going to respect and affirm the dignity of the person being taken, and I'm going to center the priorities of the most vulnerable person in this situation. But at the same time, I'm also going to remember that the people perpetrating this violence are also human beings and they can be
Mm.
reached. And what's the
Mm.
way to do that?" And that's really hard. It's really hard. And that's something a lot of people don't want to hear right now, but it's something for all of us to digest. So we'll be going through what all of that means here in Pittsburgh, what that network looks like and how it unfolds, and how we can remain flexible, dynamic, and adaptive as immigration enforcement levels change, increase, or decrease as time goes on.
Jaime, I really appreciate all of that. When we're looking at law enforcement as a whole, and I just interviewed the sheriff of Bucks County just a couple of days ago, Danny Seisler, and he ripped up the contract basically with ICE and said, "We will not be partnering with them." And we talked a lot about safety, and we also talked a lot about the mistrust that a lot of marginalized communities have with the police, let alone ICE, because of years of re traumatization and targeting and mistreatment and violence against those neighbors. When you're looking at this from a law enforcement perspective, how how have you seen local law enforcement supporting immigrant communities and also harming them? And what would you like to say to local law enforcement about their role in working or not working with ICE?
Yeah, well, law enforcement is here to serve the community, right?
That is
Includes
the role,
everybody. That's the
theoretically.
role. Exactly. Exactly. And you know what? I do know a lot of police officers that really believe that and have made it their entire career to do
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they work in what is many times a broken system, right?
Mm-hmm.
As do many of us in all sorts of places. We all face tough choices, and I get that. But in a moment like today, to even consider cooperating with the level of violence, brutality, and dehumanization that federal immigration enforcement is perpetrating on our communities, which is also their communities,
That's right.
it's unthinkable. And those contracts, right, that ICE has with municipalities, they're called 287G agreements, 287G
Mm-hmm.
agreements. These agreements exist in Allegheny County. They exist across the country. I think there are over 3,000 agreements nationally. Please do not sign these. Please revoke them.
Yeah.
It is blood money, and it is not something that your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren will be proud of years from now. And so that's a very direct plea I have for law enforcement, but law enforcement can be good partners in this respect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there's a lot of building trust that needs to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I never want to see somebody witness like a catastrophic medical injury on the street or feel like they need to report a domestic abuser in their household and feel like they can't call the police because their life will get ruined and they'll get sent to some random country like the Kingdom of Eswatini or something where they've never been and they don't know anybody and there are no rights, right? That's the issue here. And so I think from a law enforcement perspective, what do you prioritize? Do you prioritize the camaraderie of fellow law enforcement officers at the national level, absolutely destroying trust in the country between law enforcement and the community? Or do you dig into the neighbors that you grew up with, that you know, that your kids go to school with and play soccer with, and see how you can serve and protect and defend them as well?
Well, and I think that leads itself into a topic for another time because you just made me think of how we moved away from neighborhood policing and how people were moving into neighborhoods that they weren't a part of to police. And that was part of that erosion, right? Because there is that sense of partnership. We're all in this together. And if you know the person, you're more likely to feel a little bit of connection than somebody that you don't. And I think that's why this whole situation with ICE is so unnerving because they're in full masks. We have no idea who they are. We don't even know if they are ICE, right? These are just guys in masks carrying weapons. And getting back to the event, the rapid response event, I wanted to ask you this because, like you said, Renee Good, she was a legal observer and her life ended violently and unnecessarily. And I'm sure that scares a lot of people. The idea of doing this work is very different. We watch people confronting ICE agents on social media all day long. We're like, yeah, I would do that. Yeah. But then the reality, if you've never really been, I work with a lot of people, that reach out to me that say, I've never done any activism work. I'm scared. I want to get involved, but I don't know how. How do you calm people's nerves? What do you recommend for people that have never participated in this level of civic activism, that do still want to be a part of something like what you're doing with Frontline Dignity, but maybe have trepidation or fear?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and that's a question that we get a lot, actually. And the answer to that is that in reality, we're not confronting ICE, right? We're not throwing rocks. We're not interfering with their operations or obstructing their operations. We're not asking people to put themselves in mortal danger.
Mm-hmm.
What we are asking for is witness. So if we hear that something's going on and it's in your neighborhood, can you make it out there? Can you make the 2, 3, 4 minute drive, the 10-minute drive? And just stand there with your camera and make sure that your eyes witness it. And you can show at least 6 other people that happened and that this is our reality right now. And so that kind of changes the dynamic of the situation. And I've had interactions with ICE agents where I say, hey, I'm going to record. You're going to do your thing. I need to do mine. And they're like, okay, that's how it's going to be. Right. And so again, it's part of that. How are we treating people with dignity? And that includes
Right.
everybody in this situation. And then we use the channels that we have to fight back in the courts, through public opinion, right? Through these kinds of interviews that we're having right now, little by little, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Aunt Susie from the bake sale at the conservative church parish is going to see this and is going to say, oh my gosh, my brain is melting. This isn't possible. How is this happening? And she's going to convince 3 more people that I would have never been able to reach,
Yeah.
right? And that I would have never been able to reach by throwing a rock at an officer, which I would never do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's really a different dynamic, and we teach people about how that respect goes and how we interact in those situations.
When
Yeah,
you mentioned throwing a rock, I was thinking you do throw a rock, but you throw it in the proverbial pond and you let it ripple out, right? In those
that's
ways,
exactly right.
like you make a documentation, and then people are able to see it from there. If you're just joining me, I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and we are talking about ICE. We're talking about rapid response, and I'm talking with Jaime Martinez. He's the executive director of Frontline Dignity. Jaime, as we wrap things up, I just have a few more questions for you. I was watching a video today from Face the Nation, and Chrissy Nome, who is the head of Homeland Security, she was really spouting a lot of misinformation around who they're arresting and the criminal activity that these people that are being arrested engage in. And the journalist, thankfully, was stopping her, correcting her. And of course, Christy Nome was pushing back, saying all of the things that she said were wrong, which we know were not wrong because they came from the ICE agency themselves, these numbers and statistics. But I say all of this because the level of disinformation, which to me is different from misinformation. Disinformation has the intentionality of putting mistruths within it, is so rampant. And you mix that with people's own prejudices, their own ideas of what they think this is, and you really do have a recipe for disaster. You talked about how this can be an important tool to sort of right that wrong in terms of putting out the truth and just, documenting the moment. How can people, what are some good resources that people can look into if they want to learn more about immigration from a fair and balanced perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say the first thing you can do is plug in at the local level. So wherever you are, there is an immigration network, some sort of organization that allows you to experience a connection with the immigrant community.
Yeah.
That's where we need to start, right? I always point to social media and how our algorithms lead us to micro realities, right? I'm sure
Hmm.
there are some people watching that have a completely different mindset and universe than me. And if I think A, they think Z, right? And that's a result of what social media is. It's democratized information. There is no Walter
Hmm.
Cronkite in this era to tell us the truth anymore.
Hmm.
And so when we have these algorithms that thrive on attention and engagement rather than the social good, we end up with these huge distortions of what reality is.
Right.
And a lot of people make money off of it. And it's not something where I can go knock on Mark Zuckerberg's door and say, hey, Mark, you got to shut this down. This is really bad for the country. It's not how this works. So I think what we can all do at the very fundamental level is re engage with each other. Human connection, authentic relationship. Find the person that you think you might disagree with, the person that you don't know, and ask them about their story. Ask them about their life. Ask them out to coffee. And then slowly but surely, that chasm of reality is going to start to come together. You're going to find that common ground. The person that you thought was extremely intolerable and a bigot, you might find a way to get to them over time. That person who you may think wears blue hair and is way too woke for society or whatever, talk to them enough as a conservative, and you're going to start to see some common ground too. Maybe you even have the same definition of dignity,
Mm.
and you can start figuring out a way to come together. So we all need to turn the temperature down. We all need to stand up and speak the truth and protect the most vulnerable among us, because the truth will eventually come out. And every video we take, every time we go out, that's a step in the right direction. That's a step towards truth. And we need to dig in. We need to dig into our own humanity.
I appreciate that. Jaime Martinez, thank you so much for joining me. I just wanted to wrap things up with a final question, a more personal question. How are you? Because this work is very hard. I just heard you breathe, right? I mean, you hold it here, right? I mean, we're holding it here. And I often ask the activists, what do you do? The people that really are at the front line of a lot of these spaces, how are you? And how do you find a sliver of peace when people are constantly looking to you in this space for the answers, for the solutions? What are some things that you're doing to take care of yourself and your community?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. It's not asked enough, so I appreciate it a lot.
Hmm.
Um, but I think community is important to me, and I have my people around me that make me unplug and distract
Hmm.
me from the work, and that allow me to kind of reconnect with myself. I
Hmm.
love taking long walks outdoors. I have two fur babies at home. I have a golden retriever and a black cat, so very iconic duo, and they always keep the house busy. And I always do find a lot of peace actually going to adoration. So I'm Catholic, if you haven't
Hmm.
noticed already, right? And I my favorite thing to do is to go to a 24-hour adoration chapel.
Hmm.
And so these are just like spaces that are open for quiet prayer all the time.
Hmm.
And so I walk in probably late at night after a Sheetz run. Sheetz is a gas station here in Pennsylvania. And I just sit there with my thoughts, and I either journal or I read or I pray or I ask for guidance. I ground myself in that way.
Yeah.
And that makes the work sustainable for me. And I know that I can go to bed every night understanding that I've done everything possible for the betterment of the people around me. And that brings me a lot of peace in today's moment.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that little bit about yourself. And just know that we see you in your full humanity. And we are so lucky that you are here in Pittsburgh doing such incredible community work. And if people want to learn more about your organization, Frontline Dignity, or if they want to get involved with an upcoming event, where can they go?
You can go to frontlinedignity.org or follow us on our socials. We are Frontline Dignity. So at Frontline Dignity on Instagram, on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn and TikTok as well. We'd love to see you online. We'd love to even better see you in person. And shoot us an email if you have any questions or concerns, or if you want us to come out to your part of the country.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Jaime. And thank you to everyone who joined today's conversation. I'll be posting this if you came in a little late. No worries. This is going to go up on my Substack here in a moment. And as always, everyone, until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other. Have a good night.